This is John Walton, and you're listening to the Power Play Point podcast with the Blue Liner on point and Anna Knox. Here's Wilson, and on the right side, he
Rebound loose, wild scramble in front, score! Ovechkin with a buzzer beater! It'll count!
And a hat trick tonight, number 21,
Spectacular! Braden Holtby!
Hello and welcome once again to the Power Play Point podcast. This is your host, the Blue Liner on Point, talking to you live to tape from downtown Glen Burnie, Maryland, where sun's starting to set. Starting a little earlier this evening. It's a little after quarter after 4 this Sunday evening, December the 4th, that we're talking to you this evening. And it's another week of Caps hockey, kind of an even or uneven week, depending on how you want to look at it. And we're at the quarter pole, and that's it's time to do some self-reflection on the team, and so that's what we're going to focus on after we cover this week's worth of games. So the Mermaid is out for the next 2 weeks, as we said. So we're going to have a couple guests on for the next couple weeks. So with us this week to help us out from the Sudden Death podcast. I hope I got that right, is Jacob Michael. He's been on with us before. Jake, how you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. So I understand you started that new podcast. Before we get into everything else, give us a shout about that. Plug that up for us.
So it's the Sudden Death Sports podcast. Me and my co-host, Nick, we try to do a recording every week. Focus is mostly on NHL, but we dive a lot into the NFL as well. If there's any sports bettors out there listening, he actually is a co-runner of the ESB Sports Bets company, and we'll do picks. And I've made a lot of money with him. You guys should check us out and try to make some too.
Awesome. May have to. I don't want to get too much into that, but may have to take you up on that. Of course, in Maryland here, they've finally opened up the doors in the last couple weeks on online sports betting. So, that's sounds pretty good. So, when are you guys? Is that a weekly podcast you got? How can we turn that on? How can we get to that?
So the ideal goal is to be weekly. We're still kind of going over the scheduling between his other endeavors and what I've got going on. We try to do recordings every Sunday evening after the NFL's wrapped up. I think tonight we're actually going to be doing a live recording during the Cowboys-Colts game, kind of going over that, and then going over the NFL landscape, and also touching we did a quarterly wrap-up on the NHL on last week's podcast. So this week, I think we're probably going to focus more, in our NHL coverage on Ovechkin's 1,300th game and just some of the numbers that he's put up. This week will probably be more of a reflective episode. And also the college football playoffs just came out today, so we'll be going over that and diving into that as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. All sounds good. So, we'll be this being your first, starting out with that kind of the maiden voyage of that, we'll be sure to put a link to that on the show notes. So always good to collaborate with fellow Caps fans that have their own side projects. So good to see that you got that up and running. All right, so the plan for this episode is, as I mentioned, is to go over the 3 games. Now, our feature game will be the one that took place this past, I believe, was Thursday, first of the month, against the Kraken over at Climate Pledge Arena. And that was, of course, the overtime loss. So we're going to go through the first game that took place Tuesday in Vancouver against the Canucks. Kind of got breeze through this. Yes, it was a win. Yes, a lot of good things happened, but I'm going to draw a line through this game because Vancouver, unfortunately, is having a lot of struggles this year. They didn't start their number one goalie. That's not to diminish, of course, what happened in the game. Of course, Ovechkin got 2 goals and broke another record. But Vancouver is just a different animal. They're not representative, I think, certainly of a top tier team or a team that is going to, blow off any doors. So it was nice that they got the win, but it's a lower tier team. And yeah, at the end of the day, yes, they were supposed to get the 2 points in regulation against them. So Ovechkin, as I said, he got 2 goals. Mantha got a goal in this game. Anthony Mantha's an Ant-Man sighting in this one, and Carlson and Faravari finished it. Faravari got his first of the year in this one, the empty netter to wrap it up. And Ovechkin, as I said, is the one where he broke the tied and then broke the record for most individual goals on the road for a career. I forget the number. It's like 403, something like that. 404, 403. Yep.
403 was the record breaker.
Yep. So 5-1 win for the Caps in this one. I don't want to treat it like a nothing to see here, but again, Vancouver, not exactly representative of a team you want to compare yourself to. So we're just going to gloss through that one. And I'm going to skip the Seattle game because that happened in the middle of the week. And then the most recent game was, of course, the one Calgary last night. And I think the NBC Sports Washington team made a good point where, the last meeting was about a week ago, and if you meet up with a team that you recently beat, they're going to come after you next time, especially if the return match is recent. And it obviously showed that Calgary was a lot more ready to play this game than were the Caps. Let's just briefly go over what happened. Basically, what happened was, Caps and Flames traded goals in the first period. Mangiapane put them ahead 2-1 early in the second. And then the second is where things kind of, I don't want to say all hell broke loose, but you had 2 players go out. Faravari and first, and then Kemper. Both are officially day-to-day according to the team. Kemper had I don't know what he had. He actually took himself out of the game. Now it's worthy to note that it had nothing to do with concussion spotting, nothing to do with that. So I'm not really sure what the official diagnosis is, where it's an upper body, lower body. I really haven't heard. Jake, you might have heard, but I haven't heard anything official as far as that diagnosis. Faravari, on the other hand, kind of obvious what was wrong with him. He got crunched along the boards by Milan Lucic, and he was holding his left arm like it was going to fall off, and made it down the tunnel and never came back. And there were reports in the postgame where he was seen holding his arm in a sling. But officially, as of right now, he's day to day. Have you heard anything beyond all of that?
On the on the Faravari injury, I haven't. Laviolette had his media time. They didn't have a skate today, but he did a media session at about 1:00. He didn't really elaborate. I think they're both still listed day to day. The only thing that I have seen would be on the Kemper front, and that is that Hunter Shepard, the goalie for Hershey, who is just having an amazing season for them down there, it was made known that he was not available to the team today, and that Zach Kucali would probably be their starter. So I can only try to connect the dots and put 2 and 2 together and say that that's probably a call-up happening. But and if that's the case, maybe it's just a game or 2. Obviously you want to have Kemper back if you can have him. But this injury-filled season just seems to keep going down that path. They can't escape the injury bug this year.
Yeah, it's fortunately or unfortunately, Caps have been lucky in that regard, at least until this year. And that's unfortunately, it looks like their luck's finally run out on them as far as that goes. Now, I can add to this. There is a report that the Bears have signed someone to a PTO, a goalie to a PTO, someone by the name of Justin Kapelmaster. I've never ever heard of this guy, but they've signed him to a PTO contract, evidently to fill in some holes. I am a bit surprised that the Bears would allow a call up of Hunter Shepard since he has been the better of the two goalies. You and I discussed this a little bit before we went on. Fucale obviously has league experience. So in some sense that it's the logical move to bring him up, but Shepard is clearly having the better season. So if they allowed him to be called up, yeah, and basically he would be riding the bench for however many games. He probably wouldn't see the ice. So for him to be called up just to serve as a backup for however long, a week or whatever it's going to be, and he's just going to miss all that time where he could be winning games for Hershey. I kind of find that surprising, but in some sense, it's also logical given the season that he had. He does deserve a shot at the big time, but I don't think you made the point that it doesn't seem like he would actually get any playing time if it was him that they called up. So I don't know. I'm bewildered and surprised all at the same time at that. But then again, it does make sense in some front. But again, bad luck again on the injury front. Once again, they just Jake, you hit it on the head. They cannot escape it this year for whatever reason, and now they're back in the other shoe dropping mode. You wonder what the hell's going to happen next as far as that, and I think it's affecting their play, but more on that in a bit. The not long after the injuries hit, speaking of which, I think the quality of play went down. I think not that the Caps have been all that physical for the majority of the season, but the quality of play definitely went over a cliff in this game. And yeah, everything really started to fall apart after the third period because they weren't generating any offense. They had, in the last 40 minutes, they had as many shots in the two periods, less than they did in all of the first period. 15 shots in the first, a total of 14 in the second and third. And they made Daniel Vladar's night very easy in that they weren't generating too many high danger chances. And yeah, everything just died, and it was no good. And then they gave up the 2 goals in the 55 seconds, and that was pretty much it. And they were just not ready to play. I don't want to. I sound like a broken record. Anna and I have talked about this to death, but it was yet another example of the Washington Capitals refusing to put together a 60-minute game to their detriment, to their peril, and you see what happened. And yeah, this is what you get when you don't put out the effort in when you need to for the whole 60+ minutes. This is what you get, and story we've told about 1,000 times. So typical. Unfortunately, it's been the typical Caps result lately. So not going to get into that too much. Now, the game we are going to focus on is the one that occurred this past Thursday in Seattle, as we already mentioned. That was against the Kraken. This was a game where the Caps came out really good. Well, you could also argue that the effort wasn't quite there, but unlike the other game, they were at least playing well enough so that they could have eked out the win. Let's briefly go over the scoring summary. So Faravari, who was having a pretty good week up until he got hurt, opened the scoring in the first 7:36. Slapper with Ovechkin and Sherry on the assists. And Connor Sherry got a goal of his own on the power play, 14:04. Johansson Ovechkin on the assist on that one brings them up 2-0 for the game. Jaden Schwartz on the power play for the Kraken at 13:28. Vince Dunn and ex-Cap Andrei Burakovsky with the assists on that. Burakovsky really lighting it up this year. I think he's finally found a home in Seattle. Of course, he was on the Cup-winning team in Colorado last year. Yanni Gourde would tie it in the third, and the Kraken really started to ramp it up in the third period. And unfortunately, I think the Caps just weren't matching their intensity, although they got 12 shots on goal in that period to the Kraken's 10. But you could tell that the Kraken were really hungry to tie it up, and they really ramped up their efforts, getting a lot of close-in chances in the game, forcing a lot of high danger saves from Darcy Kemper. And you could tell they were eventually going to get the goal. So Gord ties it. Daniel Sprong, another ex-Cap, and Vince Dunn with the assist on that one with the backhander. And then Jake, I'm going to need your help on this one. You used to play defense. You used to play defense, right?
I played defense my first three seasons, and then moved up to left wing.
Okay, so help me out on this one. I don't know. I'm sure you saw it, but that overtime goal, was there anything John Carlson could have done? Any way he could have played that any better, or was this on him at all?
No, it's not on him. It's not on him at all. What really irritated me as a forward about that goal is that at no point did they ever have established possession of the puck. And B, why are there two Kraken back there with only one Capital? It looked like off the draw they were just kind of puck watching. And then it left him out to dry. And, obviously Beniers gets a breakaway. And then that's a guy you don't want to give a chance to either. Like, he's a really good young kid.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Look, and again, I've said this a lot. I'm probably one of the last people that's going to defend John Carlson, but yet again, here's a play where I don't think you can fault him at all, because number one, it was a botched faceoff win by Lars Eller. What did he expect Carlson to do? When you put it up in the air, it's immediately handcuffed him. What's worse is, just like you said, the two forwards for the Kraken were immediately on him, and there was nothing he could do, nowhere he could go. He had no chance to corral the puck, do anything with the puck, and he got absolutely no help whatsoever. I can't remember who the third skater was, but I don't know what Eller did, if anything, after he won the faceoff, but he certainly wasn't helping out any. And it was all she wrote. It was I think it was either I can't remember, Sprong or Gord, and then of course Matty Beniers, who you're talking about, ended up with the puck after that brief scrum, and he broke in on Kemper all alone, and he just put it away. And it all took 7 seconds. And yeah, it was yet another OT game that the Caps could have won, but didn't win because they didn't want to win it. And they didn't come with that killer instinct. And it cost them yet again. They could have had another standings point to keep them afloat, but they just did not come at it with the right attitude. And it was just a botched face-off win that, again, Carlson he couldn't do anything with it. There nothing. So I look, we're all hard on Carlson. He's not exactly the best defensive defenseman, but there was zero he could do about it. And you're going to be. We want to be better fans, so we got to look at it from a truthful, knowledgeable angle. There was zero he could do, and he did his absolute best. He's been doing what he's been doing, which is controlling the puck and chipping in the odd assist and goal. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's actually been, over the course of the last 2 weeks, probably one of their better defenders, better players overall, at least.
I will go with you on players overall. I won't go with you on better defenders. Look, he's still, I think the numbers came out this week, and I think he ranked 144th out of like 155 defensemen that registered in giving up high danger opportunities. So like the defense is still almost non-existent. But in this particular instance, I think he actually did what you're supposed to do in that situation. It's open ice, so it's not like you have the boards to tie or slow down the play. He tied up two guys for a good 2 seconds. In that situation, you have to have a forward that's coming back to help you. If you don't have that, then you're going to end up in the situation that they ended up in. I mean, it's basically like he just got ganged up on. And like you said, he could not have played that any better. And I don't want to really dive too far into this, but my other issue with that goal is the lineup they put out. Why the hell is Lars Eller taking that face-off?
It's
not like you just gave up a third period lead again. You need standings points. You need your best players on the ice. And especially to start the period. Now, if it's situational, penalty kill, something like that, okay, I understand. I'm not going to make that big of a fuss about it. But it just seemed like a very questionable lineup decision to me. And I've been seeing quite a few of those recently, which is unnerving.
Well, we'll discuss the overall coaching situation when we get to our quarter poll evaluation. But no, you got me as far as why Eller was the one out there, unless. Unfortunately, for the life of me, I can't remember. Maybe the number one line was out there to end the game, and the idea was to rest them. Maybe that was it. That's the only explanation I can come up with. But even so, you have to win that opening faceoff. So you've got two guys on there that have a much better chance overall of doing that in Nick Dowd and Kuznetsov. So put Dowd out there at least. Let him win the faceoff. Let Carlson or whoever's playing back take it back behind the net. Get Dowd off. Get your number one center back on, or another forward back on. However you want to do it. It's not hard. It's not rocket freaking science. But yeah, for the life of me, you're right. Why is Lars Eller of all people out there? He's not the greatest skater, and with all that open ice and overtime, you need speed, you need movement, you need quickness, and none of those describe. Or at least if you don't have any of that, you need a guy that knows how to hang on the puck, and that's at least Carlson. So I don't know. None of that made any sense to me whatsoever. And another key to this game was, like you were talking about when we were talking before we went on. Grubauer played pretty well. He's having one hell of a bounce back season. It should be said. Last year he was. He was pretty bad, and that's putting it politely. But he's having a much better season this year, and I think that's the key to the Kraken being, presto changeo, a contender all of a sudden this year, or one of those keys anyway. And they've also got a lot of young legs, a lot of guy with hands, and Burakovsky's starting to come into his own. Sprong's playing a lot better. A lot of guys are playing. Vince Dunn I think is probably one of the most underrated defensemen in the league. He's having a decent season. And
do they still have Eberle?
What's that?
Do they still have Eberle?
Jordan Eberle, good question. I am going to look up the lineup. Yes, they still have him. He was a -1 in this game, and he got 1455. So yeah, he's still an up and comer, although he didn't really show up on the score sheet this game. But check his season stats real quick. He's not having too bad a year. 6-16 and 22 in 24 games, +3 overall. Not too shabby. So
and he had a good year last year as well.
Yeah, he was pretty good for him. Probably one of their best players last year. Ryan Donato, good underrated center, good bottom six center. for them. So, word of warning, not to be this is not to be a team that you take lightly just because it's their second year. They are legit. But that's enough about that opponent. Even though that might be a team that the Caps want to model against. Let's just get to the guts of it. The Caps, the knock on them is that they're older and slower, and well, it's well, there are no two ways about it. It's the truth. They needed to have started something of a retool or rebuild or whatever the hell you want to call it as recently as last year, maybe even before that. And well, we're one quarter of the way into the season, and it's time to start getting realistic on what we can expect. But at the same time, I'm not ready to throw in the towel on the season completely. Now
No.
there are some of you out there who are, and shame on you, frankly, for even entertaining those thoughts, because I mean, come on, we live in a reality where as recently as 3 years ago, there was a team that was dead last at the turn of the new year, and came back to win it.
Blues.
Yep, came back to win it all in 2019, and that is still within the realm of possibility. Anything is always possible, and when the Caps play their game and they are, well, reasonably healthy, I don't think there's a team that they match up unfavorably against. I think they can compete as long as they commit to a 60-minute game and play their game. Now, what's the thing that I've said all year? This team has lacked an identity, and I'll explain myself again. They go out there, they don't play with any sort of intent to win, and that's because they're missing their physical element, now even more so with Dmitry Orlov gone. So the key is going to be when both Orlov and Tom Wilson come back, you are going to start to see the real Capitals team. Now, Orlov's status, as far as I understand it, is that he's going to be out at least one more game. So I understand it. I haven't heard anything official, but he will probably miss Monday's game against Edmonton at the very least, and we'll see then.
God, I can't remember his name. The Cats report, Tarek
El-Bashir?
Yes. He noted today, I saw on his Twitter, that Orlov skated with the scratches, but it sounds like he's going to miss the Edmonton game.
Yeah, Orlov's been skating in practice for at least the last week and a half, which has frustrated the crap out of me, because if he's skating with them, then he should be ready, but apparently he's not.
He had a setback in one of those practices, I believe. I think there was some sort of collision towards the end of practice.
Yeah, he and Alexia crashed into each other towards the end of practice, and that kind of that set him back a ways.
But it is a positive sign that he's still traveling with the team. So if he wasn't on this road trip, you can make the case that, he might not be back for a little bit. But the fact that he's traveling with the team, he's not staying in D.C. to be with the trainers and the medical staff, that's a really good sign.
Yeah, and between you and me, look, I don't want to waste too much time about this. You and I have gone back and forth a lot about him whenever we've had you on, but I'm pleasantly surprised that TJ Oshie, and I'm knocking on my wood desk here, has come back, was able to come back relatively as quickly as he did, even though he missed a dozen games. I thought he'd be out for much, much longer. And it doesn't look like they rushed him. So it looks like he's, as close to 100% as we can expect for the time being. So as long as he's in the lineup, then the offense has much more of a shot. Certainly the power play has much more of a shot to produce as long as he's in the lineup. He's definitely made a difference. But yeah, the key is going to be whenever Tom Wilson comes back, and I've heard anything from 1 week to next month, to the All-Star break. So you tell me, take your pick when the hell he's supposed to come back, because I don't know. But whenever you've got your best hitter and your best power forward in the lineup, then you're going to see the real Capitals play. I just hope by then it's not, too many games haven't gone by at that point. You've got a lot of now the Caps. Let me wind the schedule back a bit. The schedule hasn't been very kind. There's already been 2 long road trips. Of course, the Caps started the year with a back-to-back, and they've had a lot of back-to-backs. And they've had one long road stretch, but 2 long road trips. So the schedule hasn't been nice to them. Maybe it will start to even out. There's a break coming up in both January and the All-Star break coming up in February. So maybe they'll start to gel then, so to provide something of a forecast. But yeah, hopefully by then you'll see those 2 guys. And again, I'm trying to offer some hope here to you out there on the other side of the speakers, the earbuds, what have you, that you shouldn't give up on this team. The guys, no less than the on-air crew at TNT, all those guys, they all said the same thing. Don't count out this team until the main lineup comes back. And of course, we don't know when Backstrom's coming back. That he might not make it back till the end of the year. But we're talking about, mainly at this point, Orlov and Wilson. And maybe even Beck Malenstein. Although I wouldn't, I don't really have a problem with the bottom 6. You might have a different opinion on that, Jake, but that's how I take it. Now that we haven't really seen the real Caps, so I don't want to give a complete evaluation other than, well, if they put out a 60-minute effort in some games, that could be the difference between the 2 to 5 standings points more that they would have. They'd probably be a lot closer to a wild card spot right now. But that's water under the bridge.
Well, and it's like you said, too, when you were talking about people who were throwing the towel in, you said shame on them. You're absolutely right. Shame on them. Because, you bring up the schedule. I went to see them on the Halloween game in Raleigh against the Hurricanes. They didn't have John Carlson. They didn't have Dmitry Orlov. They didn't have TJ Oshie. They're missing basically half their lineup. They take that team to a shootout. And then that was the first night of a back-to-back in which they had to travel again back to D.C. against arguably the best team in the West this year, Vegas. They got points in both of those games. So right. It's not like they're – and see, look, here's the thing, too. You just mentioned the difference between 2 to 5 standings points. They have 24 points right now. The final wild card spot in the East belongs to, and this is crazy to even think about, last year's President's Trophy winners, the Florida Panthers, at 28 points. They're only 4 points behind the playoff spot right now. That's 2 games that they're out. And there's been times at this year where they've had over $40 million on the IR. So it's like, yes, I understand. And look, I think it just goes to show how spoiled we've been as a fan base over the last 15 or so years. But I'm totally with you. It's not time to tank. It's not time to throw in the towel. Look, and here's the thing. This draft class is so deep that even if you do miss the playoffs and end up with like a 13th or 14th pick, there's a lot of value in that pick. So, I understand that we want to see the team win, and I understand we want to see the team succeed, but I think they're in a really good spot, even though the record doesn't necessarily show that.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, there's no reason to throw away, not with this many games left, not when literally anything can happen. And look, if Tampa Bay, for example, can miss several key players, still not only make the playoffs but contend for a cup. Some of you might be throwing stuff at throwing your iPod across the room or whatever, your phone across the room, listening to this, saying bad example, it's not the same example. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. But the fact is, the teams that get their injury problems out of the way early enough tend to bounce back late in the season. And if they're enough quality, then they make a splash come the playoffs. They tend to. History shows that. So, look, I'm not promising that's going to happen, but I think once you get the regular lineup and that chemistry back, I'm going to say that's supposed to be what happens. But that's not to say at the same time they don't have their issues. Now, there have been others that say that the coaching staff has refused to adapt their overall plan to the lineup that we've got. And I would say that they definitely have an argument because, unfortunately, no, we don't have that physical presence, and we don't exactly have the most mobile defenseman to play the pinch game that is required in Kevin McCarthy and Laviolette's overall plan. Nick Jensen is good at open ice. I wouldn't call him the best skater, though, but
No.
You force a guy like that to pinch in and then draw back as soon as the puck starts going the other way. What and the forwards don't check. What the hell do you think is going to happen? And it's stuff like that happens in a game that can lose games for you. And I think it's high time the coaching staff tweaks their overall plan a little bit to prevent that.
Well, yeah. Well, the main thing that they have to do is they have to start getting better at creating high-risk opportunities in the net. I think through 26 games, they have 71 goals for. That's 23rd in the league. That's 12th in the East. So that's not going to cut it. And the reality of the matter is when they score at least 3 goals in a game, their record is 10-1-1. Anytime they've scored less than 3 goals, they're 0-11-3. So it's a matter of putting the puck in the net. It's a matter of creating these opportunities. You brought up the game the other night where they had more shots in the first period than the last 2 combined. That's part of the problem. Like, you have to put the puck in the net. And, you and I spoke about this a little bit before, and you're right. He's not having a terrible season with his stat line. This, especially with the injuries, this is where you need a Kuznetsov. I'm sorry, but in 26 games, he's only scored in 2 of them. Just that one player having a few extra goals could be the difference. Like I said, it's only 4 points that's separating them. And you see the difference in their record with just 1 goal between 2 goals and 3 goals, how vastly different their record is. If you have him finding the net a little bit more, and let's also say I think he's been a little bit more of a pass-first player this year, but he also has a shot percentage below 6%. And that it's actually the worst shot percentage of his career for a full season. So it's just a couple little things that they can tweak and improve upon. Because, listen, I'm with you. I don't think anybody expected anything out of the defense this year. And I think you would have been foolish to begin with. But the offense has been a lot slower than it needs to be. And I think if they can just figure out a way to get that extra goal. You scored 2 in the first period against Seattle. You should at least leave that building with 4, including an empty netter. So just a couple of things, if they can just tweak, figure out, and get around, I think they'll be fine. Now, do I think they're going to contend for a cup? Not really, but I do think that they would be what they have been the last few seasons, and that's a perennial playoff team. Whether they get out of the first round or not is a different story.
All true, all very true. And so building on that point, and I've mentioned this before, but you played the game. I mean, you might be able to explain it, but when I don't know if it's because they've been hit so badly, so hard with injuries this year, but And you know what? It's easy to say that maybe it's because they don't have that physical presence from an Orlov or a Tom Wilson, or in longer stretches a TJ Oshie, but they just don't seem to have that killer instinct to charge the net. They don't seem to want to make life difficult for the opposing goalie by putting a body in front of the net. Everything seems to me like a perimeter game. They get the 100 and they get the 140 feet into the zone, and then they hang back. It's almost like they're afraid to turn it over. They're afraid to shoot, and they're afraid to crash the net. And they do just enough to create one chance. And it's, I think I heard Alan May or somebody from the broadcast crew say one and done for the offense every time they gain the zone. And that's exactly what happens. They gain the zone, one shot on goal, and they're done.
It's infuriating to watch.
Oh, it is. Terribly so.
But like you said, from a player standpoint, and I don't want to go, too heavy into this or make like speculations with the coaching staff, because we've kind of already discussed that. But the chemistry issue is real. I mean, especially with the top two lines, how many lineup changes have they made throughout this season? I don't know if they've had a 3-game stretch where they've kept the same pairings out. So, it's hard to build chemistry with guys that you don't normally play with, and it's even harder when it's basically a rotating door for who's going to be on your line or not. It seems like the only guarantees are that you're going to have Ovechkin on the first line, you're going to Ferris wheel between Strome and Kuznetsov on that center, and then it seems like the second line, it lands where it lands, and Mantha on the third line potentially. So I do think that they have some issues with building chemistry, but like I said, if there's just a couple of things they can clean up, get a couple more pucks in the net, they're probably the 7 or the 8 seed right now. So, and let's not forget, this team did beat New Jersey in New Jersey. Now, granted, it was Blackwood playing until the third period, but still, they put up 6 in that game. So, I mean, the pieces are there. They just have to make some tweaks and some adjustments to get it right.
Absolutely. I'm kind of with you because, there's something to be said for, get into the show and you can do all kinds of damage. Well, to be realistic, that may or may not happen. But the goal is to just make it to the playoffs. This team can make it to the playoffs, even with the decimated lineup that they've got. They've got enough, just as you said, to be able to do that. But like you said, there's no chemistry right now. And I'm not going to say it's all on the coaching, but a lot of games this team just does not look ready to play, doesn't look like they've got the hunger and the desire. So it might be – they have made a whole lot of moves to get some new players in. We don't have time to evaluate all the new guys. I do want to talk about one new guy who seems to be acclimating very well, although I do have a knock on his game. So I think we talked about this last week. The Sonny Milano and his game, I think they've got him right now with on the second line with Strome or Kuznetsov centering, and Oshie the opposite wing. That line needs to stay together. That line needs a chance to build some chemistry. I will say this, though. The one knock I have on Milano's game is, and somebody else pointed this out, and I didn't really see it for myself until recently. His back-checking game could use quite a bit of work. But other than that, I like Milano's game overall. He goes to the net a lot, and he does what he can to get force the open pass. So I would like to see more of that second line get some time together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been praising him ever since he came over. Could the back checking be better? Yeah, but he's also the type of player he is. He's an opportunistic player,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of where he thrives. You see that with the I can't remember who it was against, but when he comes out of the penalty box and he gets a break, like that's where you're going to see him thrive more than anything. The new guy that I'm the most proud of, and I'm also proud of both yourself and I, because we called this before the season started, and how important that this signing was. Strong. He's been fantastic this year.
I won't argue that, except I think he's got a little. He's definitely got room to improve, as good as he is. And yeah, I will say this: without him, probably the offense doesn't even have as much jump as it has now. He definitely creates opportunity, and he definitely has proven that he's belonged on the power play. But I still, the knock I still have on him is that I think he's a little too tentative at times when he has the puck. And very much like Kuznetsov, he's often pass first when he's often by himself in front of the net. He still tends to think pass first when he ought to be shooting. But that's not a bad thing to have. He doesn't have a bad shot. I just think he needs to use it a lot more. I think he needs to develop more of a killer instinct. And I'm probably going to open up a can of worms here, but maybe, just maybe this team needs to think shoot first a lot more, even when the captain is on the ice. And
oh yeah,
now that the elephant's in the room, let's just say it. When Ovi's out with them, obviously the thing is, he's got to get the record. Let's dish it to him, and that. I'm sorry, that's got to stop. And maybe it's high time for something like a players-only meeting where he stands up and says, "Hey, look, if you got a chance to score, just take it." Maybe it needs to come from him. I don't know, but what I see when this team gains the zone is 5 guys who want to pass the puck around, and they're waiting for the perfect opportunity, and it doesn't come. They put a half-hearted shot on net, and the other team gets it, turn around, leave the zone. Every possession, that's what you're going to see. Am I wrong, or am I wrong?
No, I mean that's factually exactly what they do, and that's even been the case on the power play at times too. I mean, and granted, I know when I was at the game there were a lot more injuries, so they might have improved on this a little bit since then. But they had no ability to establish possession in the attacking zone on the power play. There were errant passes, turnovers, dumps and chases, to which Carolina would just get the puck and toss it back out. So I do think that they need to be better at puck control. And as you mentioned, just putting pucks on net. You never know what's going to happen when you put the puck on the net. It might bounce off a heel. It might bounce off a stick. It might deflect. Just put the puck on the net.
Key operative words being on net, and not, take the shot from 60 feet away with somebody 2 feet in front of you so that it gets blocked. That all has to stop too. So we've taken apart the forwards in the offensive game. Got a little bit of time left. Let's kind of do something of an evaluation of the defense. Now it's worth saying that I think we also, this is something else we touched on before we went on air. Just about all of the starting 6, except one, their contracts are expiring after this year. So it's worth beginning with that. But even so, you got what you got. And I'm at a loss here. I don't know, other than a complete change of the game plan, how you can improve the defense, because unfortunately I think what the coaching staff is trying to do is force a square peg through a round hole. I don't think this defense is suited to the game they want them to play. And yet I'm seeing, so I'm seeing, for example, a lot of bad habits creeping back in. His first year with the team, Nick Jensen, what you would see a lot of him doing, falling down face first to block a shot. And then he'd be like, grandma from the Life Alert commercial. I've fallen and I can't get up. And he'd lay on the ice and go swimming for 20 seconds. His second year, he got a lot better. He was standing up. He was using his stick, using his body, and winning puck battles. Now this year, he's regressed into those bad habits again, where he's flopping on the ice again, and hoping he's going to block the shot or the pass. And that's I really hope he kind of weans himself out of that, because he's a lot better when he plays a stand-up game. I can't believe I'm talking about a defenseman and not a goalie when I say that, but he's a lot better when he plays that way. Orlov, unfortunately, we haven't seen a whole lot. I think we can get a more accurate read on how the defense goes if we saw him, but he's been gone for so long. Faravari, he's been moving the puck a lot better and creating scoring opportunities, which is a plus. But I think to his game on the other side of the puck has been kind of suffered because of that. One of the new guys, Gustafson, he's Carlson light to me, and that's being polite. And that's as concise as I can put it. He'll have great games when he moves the puck, and he'll have really bad games. But yeah, that's my evaluation of him. And everybody knows what I think of Carlson, but the truth about him is he probably isn't as bad as some make him out to be, myself included. And the truth about him, even further, is that he drives the offense. So, he's love him or hate him, we got to keep him because of that simple fact. And the others, I haven't seen enough. Irwin, I haven't seen enough of him to make a complete evaluation. Alexeyev too, but. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you can do to make the defense better. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's an experimental thing, honestly, at this point, and I don't necessarily have a problem per se with Matt Irwin, but if Alexeyev could go, he needs a roster spot. If what's the other young guy's name? Johansson. If he can go,
Luke
give him a
Johansson.
chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what Matt Irwin is. Like, you know what you're gonna get. And I could even make the case with McMichael too. I really don't like the way that they're handling some of these young guys. I don't think they're gonna improve that much unless either they're A, playing in Hershey, or B, playing in Washington. Like, the healthy scratches for McMichael to me was infuriating. But it's with the injuries, like I said, it's experimental. Like, you know what you've got, and pretty much everyone that's there except Faravari. Is he going to continue to improve? What is his game going to look like? But everyone else, you know what you have. And like I said earlier, no one really expected much out of the defense this year. So me personally, I think with you bringing up the expiring contracts after this year, I think you just need to revitalize that entire blue line.
So that begs the question, do they make a deal this year? Do they make a move this year to try and do that? Or do they just let everybody's wait till the end of the season, let everybody's contracts expire, and then do your retooling then? Maybe maybe also hope that Alexeyev and Johansson are both ready at that point.
I don't think you're going to see them do much at the deadline. And McClellan actually did a press conference earlier and just kind of discussed this. It's hard to make meaningful moves when you have so much money on IR, and you're going to have to figure out a way to reintegrate it. And then also the fact teams are not really going to want to give you that much for a guy who you're setting out as bait. on an expiring contract when they can just wait until the end of the season and make an attempt to sign him and not have to give you anything. So on the defensive end, I don't really think you're going to see much happen this season. I think it's probably going to be more of an off-season thing that they have to address.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think as far as the decor is there, unless that perfect deal comes out of the blue, yeah, it's another case of well, we got what we got, and that's it. And it was. I don't know. Maybe it was out of necessity, but the forwards, they that all was a lot more fluid. You didn't see as much. Except obviously you're going to have to replace Justin Schultz, but I don't think. I don't know. As much as I like Gustafsson's game at times, I don't think his we didn't really need a Carlson clone, even one that was a lighter version of that. We didn't really need that. I hope that wasn't what they were going for in this guy, but as good as he can be, especially on the special teams and what I've liked that he's done, I think that was, unfortunately, looking back, that was probably not such a good move to bring him in. I would have liked to have seen. I had a guy in mind, but there was no way they were going to get him. But I would like to have seen a younger, faster defenseman, fill in that slot. But I don't know what they were thinking as far as that goes by picking him up. So
you
yeah,
and I might be thinking about the same defenseman that was in the free agency market. And if it's the guy who I'm about to say, he's going to be in the free agency market again this year.
I think you and I are on the same page.
I would be willing to let every single defenseman on an expiring contract, minus Dmitry Orlov, walk if you can give Alexeyev and Johansson playing time and bring in Klingberg.
Yep. You read my mind. John Klingberg. That's the guy I was thinking of, and that was the guy I was hoping they would have gone after last year. But yeah,
what he signed for? What, $7 million in Anaheim?
It was $7 million for 1 year. Yeah.
So yeah, you got two young guys. Alexeyev and Johansson are still on rookie deals, right?
Yeah, they are.
So if you let Jensen, TVR, and Gustafsson walk, you can probably afford him with Orlov, and you just have to integrate those two guys in. And I think that would be an improved defensive core over what they have.
Yeah, I agree.
Keeping Farivari and Carlson as well.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, that would make your top six in no particular order: Farivari and Carlson, Orlov and Klingberg, and Johansson and Alexeyev. And yeah, I would say that's a better 6D core than what we've got now.
I would probably split Alexeyev and Johansson up to begin with, just to kind of get them, get their feet wet. And then when they've both proven that they're standout NHL defenders, yeah, you can look at having them on the line together. Because if you have that, you would then have to be faced with the difficult decision of who you're going to move to the third pairing. But again, I think that could be like for a first quarter of the season type thing, just until those guys get comfortable where they're at. But I honestly, I think that's the way to go. I mean, it's crazy, because you're going to take a risk on two guys who you're not sure about, but the guy who you would then be able to afford to bring in is so much better than what we have. I think he would probably come in and have the potential of being a first-line pair.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to see him take over Carlson's minutes. I would like, ideally at that point, if you have a John Klingberg, then you can spell Carlson, put a little less wear and tear on him, maybe just make him even. It's been suggested by myself and at least another colleague of mine that maybe you make Carlson a power play specialist strictly, like what they did with Mike Green his last 2 seasons as a Capital, and maybe he could benefit from there. Maybe make him fresher. I don't know. That's an idea, but I think if you reduce his playing time, I think he would actually be a lot more effective on both sides of the puck. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, ideally, what you and I just discussed, if they can pull the trigger on that, I think that would improve the defense a lot. They're desperately in need of getting younger, and maybe not more skilled, but definitely able to keep up with the speed requirements of the game. We definitely need better skaters on the back line. It's definitely not what they have right now. So, all right. So I think this is a good place to kind of wind it up here a bit. So we're going to go into the schedule here and go into previews of coming attractions. So they just finished their game against Calgary. They're still on their road trip. Tomorrow evening at 8:30, they're going to play the Oilers in Edmonton. Connor McJesus and Herr Goldmeister himself, Leon Draisaitl. That's going to be one hell of an interesting game now that they have to tweak the defensive core once again.
If it's anything like that last game, I'll be happy.
Yeah. They played. They were able to keep up with them. Of course, Evander Kane being out for at least another month or so takes away a dynamic, so not as much of a punch offensively. But if you can limit McDavid and Draisaitl to not as many chances and maybe one goal each, I think you can stay competitive. I don't know why they're having as bad a year, considering they went all the way to the Western Conference Final last playoffs, but they're not as good this season. So I think the Caps can keep up with them if they make all the right moves like we discussed, go to the net more, create chances. And I'm not saying we can get into a shootout with them, but that's going to be one hell of an interesting game for sure.
Yeah.
And
well,
then
Pat Campbell, that's why they're having a bad year.
I'm not going to get into that, but I'm not going to. Yeah, I don't think you're far off there. So the next game they have is Wednesday the 7th against Philly. That's going to be another interesting game. The Caps eked out a win against them last time they played. I think they got it. Philly's in a tailspin. I think they got enough to beat them, even though they'll play you tough for sure. John Tortorella coach teams always do. But that's going to be another game. So I'm not going to chalk it up as a win automatically, but that's a game they ought to win for sure, because they're basically putting out an AHL plus lineup is what they've got pretty much with all their injuries.
Yeah, and they've already got trade rumors circulating. That they're just not a good locker room right now.
No, not at all, unfortunately. So then they finally come back home Friday on the 9th, and guess who comes to town? It's the Kraken, 7 o'clock puck drop there at Cap One. And then next week they got a big full slate of games. Let's see, Winnipeg, Chicago on the road, then back home are Dallas and Toronto to finish the week back home. Those last two, you're talking about two teams that are high caliber teams, so that's going to be Winnipeg's not doing too badly either. That's going to be a good one. Chicago ought to be a win, and that takes them to through the second week of December, and then week before Christmas you've got Detroit, Ottawa, and Winnipeg back home again, and then they go into the Christmas break. So that's who they can look at. So I think if the Caps can stay 500 through all of that, I think hopefully by then you'll have Orlov back, maybe Tom Wilson, and then maybe, just maybe, the team will start to get back to the way it was. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I think they can win 4 of those games.
Yeah, I think at least 4 or 5 of those games definitely winnable if they put. They put out the 60-minute effort. They could probably steal another game or two out of that. I think 500 is definitely doable. At this point, as far as standing points, you got to do what you can to stop the bleeding and maybe get ahead a bit. But who knows?
Winnipeg, all you have to do is beat Hellbrook. The reason they're having such a good year is they're literally riding his play. They actually are lower in league scoring than the Capitals are. So it's not like they have like a potent offense or anything. And I'm not saying you should just discount their offense or their goal scorers, but the numbers would suggest that they're not really a high caliber offense. So if you can just, like I said, put the puck on net, you never know what's going to happen. You get a couple of goals. That's an easily winnable game. They've already beat Edmonton this year, so I think they can do that again. And then you said Chicago and Philly. Those are four I think that they can win. Seattle up in the air, and you never know with Dallas and Toronto. They might lose both of them, but they also got shut out by Dallas the last time they played. So I don't think they're going to want to have a repeat of that type of game. So they might come out and play harder. So who knows? It could be a good couple weeks for them.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's reason to be optimistic. I think, even though things kind of look pretty bad as far as it goes, especially on the injury front. I get that. I get all that. I do. But there's also a lot of good that can be had. There's teams out there that we just said they can definitely compete with and beat. And there's still a lot of hockey left. And I'm not trying to sell a smoke and mirror type of thing to you here if you're listening. Okay. But I still don't think it's time to give up on this team. There'll be time enough in the off season to blow up the roster and think about that. Maybe even the trade deadline. But I mean, now is the time to retool and figure out. And again, I'm looking at you, coaching staff. Maybe figure out what you've got personnel wise and fit the game plan towards what you got. And that's what they ought to start doing. And even if they don't start doing, there's enough talent on this team to win the majority of the games that are left. And that's what they have to do to be competitive. So there's reason to believe, there's reason to hope. It does look bad, I won't lie, but there's also this team, as it's constructed right now, does have the ability to turn it around. I really think they can. It's possible that they won't. There are no two ways about it. Maybe they can't, but they have the personnel to be able to do it. And one of the keys is going to be putting together a 60-minute effort. And if they can finally start to gel, if the coaching staff will let them gel, let them build some chemistry, I think there's a good chance that they can start turning things around. That's something to look for here in these next 2 weeks. Look for hopefully if the coaching staff makes enough of an adjustment, the team will start going to the net a lot more and stop being tentative. If they keep playing their same game, then maybe not so much. And that's going to be the thing to look for. You're trying to be a better fan. You want to be more observant about those things. Look for what happens when the Caps gain the zone. Do they stand around and play past the puck, or do they put two men towards the net, or at least one, and cause traffic? Look for that. So that's my advice to you, the Caps fan. Try to remove the emotional equation out of it and just be objective and see exactly how they execute once they gain the zone. That is what we need to be looking for, and then you can make your evaluation at that point. And so with that, I will wind it up here. Jake, did you have anything else to add?
Other than just, I agree with pretty much everything you said. And, I really appreciate you having me back on. Like I said earlier, we're probably going to have another episode of Sudden Death come out tonight. You guys can find us on Facebook or YouTube with Sudden Death Sports Podcast. And, yeah, like you said, man, I think this next 2 weeks is probably going to be real defining. It's kind of, for lack of a better term, you got to kind of go balls to the wall now. And then whenever you get your guys back, have yourself in a position to continue competing. If they can do that, I think they can turn it around.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay, so once again, it's the Sudden Death Sports Podcast. I hope I got
Yes,
that
sir.
name right. Okay. And you said you could find that on Facebook and YouTube?
Yes, we have a Facebook page up already, a YouTube page. The pages are still kind of new, so we're kind of working some tweaks out. But the more followers we get, we hope to be a little bit more interactive. Polls, call-ins, things of that nature. So, like I said, we're just getting started. We just put out the first episode a few days ago. I'm probably going to be recording this week's in a couple hours. So, if you guys feel like you want to give us a listen, we kind of cover topics all over the place, mostly, like I said, hockey, NFL. Yeah, we just kind of just try to cover everything. It's really one of those things where you just sit down with a friend and the conversation takes off where it goes. And like I said, we'll be doing pick'ems for guys who are interested in sports betting. Show's brought to you by ESP Sports, so we're already working on sponsorships. So yeah, if you guys want to
Awesome.
give us a look, give us a listen, we'd really appreciate it. Right now is audio only. We are going to be looking to go with visual probably after the turn of the calendar, but we're just kind of getting our feet wet with it right now. And if you guys feel like you'd like to give us a listen, we'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always, like I said, always glad to help out a fellow Caps fan with a side project, especially if it's in some instance having to do with Caps hockey, anything like that, or any podcast or anything like that. Always glad to see somebody get that up and running. So glad to give that a plug, and not being too presumptuous. If you set it up to have call-ins or guests, like you said, hope to be on that. If I'm not insinuating myself too much. So.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be times where I'm not going to have my co-host, or my co-host isn't going to have me. Like you said, with the Mermaid being out for a couple weeks, so we're always going to be looking to have well-informed guest on the show. It always makes it better whenever you have good people around you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's present company definitely included. So once again, that's a Sudden Death Sports podcast. Give that a plug for my good friend Jake here, who's starting that up. Give that a listen to on Facebook and YouTube. And again, they're recording tonight. They usually record Sundays, as do we. So definitely give that a listen. And I think you'll find. I only had a chance to listen to the latest episode for a few minutes, but I like what I heard so far. But when I get a chance, I'm going to get through that and make sure I get through all future episodes. So yeah, definitely give that a listen, folks out there, because it's a project by a fellow Caps fan, and so we all need to stick together. All right, so a little long this week, but I think we had a lot of good information on there. I don't want to sound like I'm selling the hopium here to you guys, but at the same time, I don't think it's time to give up on this team, because they still can do a lot. So just kind of hang in there and kind of watch with a more objective eye, and I think you'll find that there is a lot of good to find in the game, and make you part of the discussion as far as the bad that you do see. If there's anything, there's that. So, all right. Well, for Jacob Michael, this is the Blue Liner on Point, and reminding you that those reverse retro jerseys are all the rage. Of course, the jersey, some call jerseys sweater. So a sweater I bought recently was picking up a lot of static electricity, so I returned it to the store I bought. And this store, I'm going to say they work with me, because this one, they gave it to me free of charge. Hallelujah, and let's go Caps.
Let's go Caps.
This has been another episode of the Power Play Point Podcast. All episodes are available from Apple Podcasts, the Podbean app, blueliner77.podbean.com, and now available from Stitcher. Music by Joe McAllister, voiceover by Jeffrey Conkle.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Power Play Point Podcast. Thanks for listening.